Hi, I'm Ella, and I'm 17. Have you ever been brave enough to change the things that you were too familiar with? If yes, did you encounter any difficulties? Well, for me, yeah. It's more than just changes. And this is the story of what happened to me last summer. And it's really crazy, so brace yourself. So, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. When I say small, I mean it. It only had a population of 85 people. There was just one gas station, 2 small parks, 1 grocery store, and oh yeah, only 1 school. Including me, there were only 7 kids in my grade. That's right, 7 people. And my grade was one of the biggest ones. From when I was 5 years old to the time I was 15, I spent most of my time with the same 6 classmates. After being with them for many years, most of them really started to get on my nerves. Well, apart from Rosie. Rosie and I became BFFs in 3rd grade. Some other kids were teasing me about my red hair and told me that I looked like a tomato. But then Rosie appeared by my side and told them to back off. From then on, we became best friends and were pretty much inseparable. My life was good. I felt safe in my little town where everyone knew each other. In a city, there were way too many people for my liking, and too much pressure to be popular, and I didn't want that. I knew a small-town life was the life for me. But then, when I was 16, everything changed. On one Saturday afternoon, I was at Rosie's house watching a movie when my parents called me and told me to come home at once. I thought this was kind of weird because my parents didn't usually call me to come home until it was late at night. And right now it was only 4:30 p.m. What did they need me to come home for? I arrived home to find Jake, my brother, crying. I bursted out loud. What happened? What was going on? Seeing me totally in shock, my dad said, Ella, we have some news. What news was bad enough to make my brother, who wasn't the emotional type, cry? Did someone have a serious illness? Had someone died? Oh no. Had my beloved dog Sally died? Then he said, Ella, I've been offered a job in New York City. What? I yelled. And he's taking it. This is an amazing opportunity for us all. And moving out of this town will be good for us. It'll be a great adventure, Mom said. New York? The biggest city in the entire country? No, I couldn't move there. I didn't want a new adventure. I was perfectly happy where we lived now, and I didn't want to leave. But however much I sulked, shouted, or pleaded with my parents to stay, their minds were made up, and we were moving. Telling Rosie was horrible. She got so upset, and I felt awful about it. I didn't want to leave her, but what choice did I have? I spent my last day in town with her. We ate pizza, watched our favorite movies, played our favorite video games, and things like that. When it was time for me to leave, I gave her my unicorn plushie to remember me by. Then we cried into each other's arms and we promised to text each other every single day. So, I left the safety of my little town and moved to the city. Our new house was much smaller than my old one, but at least we could keep Sally. On my first day of school, I was terrified. There were so many people and I didn't know where I was meant to go or what I was meant to do. Luckily, the kids there were actually really nice. This one girl showed me where my locker was, and some other kids let me sit with them at lunchtime. After only a few weeks of living in New York, I started to find my bearings. I even figured out how to navigate the underground. I made some pretty great friends, but this didn't change the fact that Rosie was still my BFF. I texted her every day, and sometimes we spent hours on the phone with each other. A month of city life passed, and I got talking to this boy in my English class called Alex. He had the most amazing blonde hair, and his eyes, they were blue like the sky and the ocean, and a swimming pool, and yeah, if you couldn't tell, I really liked Alex. Not only was he unbelievably cute, but he was also kind and funny. We bonded over our love of video games and dogs, and soon became pretty close. Then one day, he invited me over to his apartment to hang out. Then over a giant pizza and a movie, he told me he liked me and asked me to be his girlfriend. I instantly said yes. I was so excited and couldn't wait to tell Rosie, but she didn't seem all that thrilled about it. For a few months, everything was perfect for me. School life was great, and I had some awesome friends and an amazing boyfriend. Sadly, though, Rosie and I grew further apart. I barely had time to talk to her hours on the phone every night. It was like our timeline became different. She always called when I was busy, and when I texted her back, she wasn't there. I know that she always cared about me, but my busy life just carried me away. I told myself this was okay as things change. People get different friends. Though not as often as before, Rosie and I still chatted whenever we had a chance. One time I told her that I would be going out with Alex at a fancy restaurant the next day. Anytime I mentioned Alex, she seemed not cool with it. But that time she expressed her excitement and asked me a lot about our date. That made me feel so good. When the day came, I went to meet Alex at the restaurant that he had booked for us. I entered and waited for about 20 minutes for him to show. I began to get impatient and asked a waiter if he'd seen a boy with blonde hair and blue eyes come in at all. The waiter told me he had, but he'd left with a tall girl with long brown hair and brown eyes. What? Who was the girl he left with? And why? I thought of everyone I knew who fit that description. I couldn't think of anyone. Except for Rosie. But she lived in Pennsylvania. Why would she be here talking to my boyfriend? I decided to call Alex, but he sounded muffled, and I heard a girl talking in the background. It sounded like they were arguing, and then the call ended. This was so weird. What happened? I had no idea what was going on, so I headed home. On my way, I felt like someone was following me. And then I realized that there was one car driving very slowly after me. When I tried stopping, it also stopped. Oh my God. Was it having anything to do with me? I felt terrified and started to run as quick as I could until I reached my house. I turned back and saw that car parked outside my house. I was shaking as I tried to open the door. And as I did, Sally zoomed past me and ran toward the car. I had only seen her act that way whenever Alex came over. She really liked Alex. Wait, Alex? That was it. Alex was in that car. Was it a prank? I ran over to see what the heck was going on. There, sitting in the driver's seat, was Rosie. And to my complete shock, Alex was tied up in the back seat. "Rosie!" I screamed. "What are you doing here in New York with my boyfriend?" Alex screamed, "Help! She told me you were waiting for me in her car, then she kidnapped me." Rosie quickly turned around and looked me right in the face. "Oh, hi, Ella. What are you doing with my boyfriend?" "He's not a good guy for you, Ella. I need you to break up with him now, or else I will drive away so you can never find him ever." "Are you crazy? We will not break up just because you demand me to do that. Now let him go." I walked around to the passenger door to get Alex, but then the car started moving, fast. I ran after the car, but I was too slow. But Sally ran after it too, and she didn't stop. She almost got hit by cars as she ran through traffic until she was out of sight. I was so scared. I was about to call the cops when I saw a police car zoom past me. How did they know about this already? Who called 911? I looked back and saw my mom standing outside with the phone waving at me nervously. She had seen all the commotion and called the cops. Thanks, Mom. There was nothing I could do now except wait. It was awful. I was so anxious. About an hour later, a cop car pulled up to our house. The cop stepped out and opened the back door, and out came Sally. I ran up to the police car and hugged Sally. She was safe. But what about Alex? The officer told me that they'd chased the car for almost 2 miles until they cornered it on a dead-end street. He said that Rosie was very fierce and tried resisting arrest, but they'd taken her to the station. To my relief, Alex was fine, and they dropped him back home. Phew. I just didn't understand it. Rosie was my best friend. Why would she try to seriously harm my boyfriend? I later found out that Rosie was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. It's a disorder that causes people to go through extreme mood swings and do things that are out of character and crazy. Rosie had a lot going on. As well as me not being around anymore, her dad had moved out. I didn't know this as she hadn't told me. Back then, I wasn't talking all that much to her, but I'd never expected that the separation Rosie felt was too much for her and could lead her to bipolar disorder. I was her only one at that time, so she wanted her to be my only one too. But Alex appeared and made her feel insecure and seriously jealous. It is fortunate there are no serious consequences. I really hope Rosie gets the proper treatment for her disorder. We might not be as close anymore, but in my eyes, she'll always be the girl who was there for me when I was being teased, and I will always regret that I wasn't there to listen to her more when she needed me. I still feel sad about it all, but I'm trying to see the positives. Things with Alex are going great, and I'm happy here. It turns out city life is for me after all. Whether it's in friendship or love, people still need their own space. And sometimes, as sad as it is, people do grow apart. This happens in life. Being overjealous doesn't help mend things. It just pushes the other person further away.
It was March 31st. A normal day, right? Well, yeah, but not tomorrow. Nope. As it was April Fool's Day. A prankster like me waits all year for that one day when I can play jokes on people without them getting in a mood with me. I've been planning my tricks for months, and boy oh boy, it's going to be so much fun. I turned to my best friend Aya and said with a devious smile, "Just you wait until tomorrow. My prank ideas are going to be legendary." I thought Aya would want to know more, but nope. She just blew her fringe out of her face, then sighed out, "Fleur, why don't you just give it a rest this year? Reality check. No one finds your pranks funny. Only uncomfortable and annoying." What? No way! That's not true. People love my pranks. Aya continued, "Do you remember your pencil prank on Luna last year?" I nodded and let out a snort. How could I forget that prank, as it had been so funny? I'd cut Luna's pencil in half, filled her pencil grip with ink, then assembled it back together just like new. And voila! Cue an ink explosion during an otherwise boring test. Luna cried a lot because she failed her biology test and had to retake it. I shrugged. So this was technically true, but it was still funny. And the time you swapped the cheerleading team's chant music for heavy metal and made a fool out of them at the basketball match? She frowned at me. Jeez, stop being a fun killer. I'm making everyone's high school experience memorable. As, let's face it, no one will remember boring tests and tedious basketball matches otherwise. I was too busy talking to notice the ball whizzing through the air until it whacked me right on the head. Ouch! The world went black, and I collapsed. I opened my eyes to see Aya and some other kids gawping down at me. Then my teacher rushed over and shooed them off. "Fleur, are you okay?" Her and Aya helped me sit up, and while I rubbed my head, I replied, "Yeah, I'm fine, but I do feel a little dizzy." The teacher thought it would be best if I went home early, so she told Aya to take me back. I was so tired, but I knew sleeping when I might have a concussion was a bad idea, so I chilled out and watched a movie in my room until Mom came home from work. Okay, so my head hurt, and the room was still spinning, but there was no way I was going to let this small accident ruin my big day. I had planning to do, so I grabbed my notebook and checked through my prank ideas and prop list. The next morning, I woke up bright and early, and yay! The spinning had stopped. Whoa, today was the day. Let the pranking commence. I told Aya to meet me earlier, so I had time to set up my pranks. But to my annoyance, she showed up at the usual time. I hurried over to her and tapped my watch. "What time do you call this? Now I'm going to be behind schedule." She gave me a puzzled look. "For what? It's not April 1st anymore. Today is the 2nd. You had yesterday off because of your head bump, remember?" "What? What are you talking about?" "Look, it says today is April 1st. I waved my phone in her face. "Then your calendar is wrong. Check your settings or something. Now, let's go." She walked off. "No way. Don't think you can fool me," I said while trying to run after her. As soon as I arrived at school, I joined my friends in the canteen for breakfast, and Kelly looked at me and said, "How's the head?" I told her it was fine and passed her an Oreo. You know what? She ate it with no hesitation, but after one bite, she spat it into her hand. Ew, what is that? Yuck! I laughed at her and said, "Ha! That's toothpaste sandwiched between Oreo biscuits. Okay, I'm sorry. Drink this." Then I passed her a bottle of cola. She took a big gulp, then immediately spit it out. "Hey, this is so gross." Then she ran to the bathroom to clean her mouth. Yep, I put soy sauce in that bottle. I followed her to the bathroom to check on her and found her rinsing her mouth out under the tap. When she finished, she frowned at me and said, "Fleur, this isn't funny. I thought you only did these stupid pranks on April 1st. Now I have to put up with my stinky soy sauce breath all day." I rolled my eyes, then smirked. Yeah, as if it's not April 1st today. "It's not. What's wrong with you? It's the 2nd. Then she stormed off. Wait, what? What did she mean it was the 2nd? No way. Anyways, seeing as I was already in there, I decided I may as well carry out another prank. I pulled out my Nutella jar and went into one of the cubicles and waited until another girl went into the one next door. I asked her, "Hey, excuse me, my friend, do you have toilet paper in there?" She was nice and replied, "Sure." Then she passed it to me. I quickly put some Nutella on my hand, then rubbed it over her hand too. Oops! Oh boy, she screamed so loudly, and I couldn't hold my laugh. "Ew, what the hell? So disgusting, you freak!" Then she ran out to wash her hand. I stepped out. "Relax, girl. It was just a prank for Fool's Day. Just Nutella." But she sneered back. "You're crazy, and it's the 2nd already. Jeez, what's wrong with you?" Then she left. Okay, this was so weird. Why was everyone acting like it was April 2nd? On the way to class, I rechecked my phone. Yep, it said April 1st. Okay, I got it. This was everyone's dumb attempt to fool me. Well, nice try, but it so wasn't working. As it was the 1st, which meant it was time for math class. I took my seat in class and waited, but, why did Mr. Simmons, the chemistry teacher, walk in? He told us to prepare for our next lesson in the lab. What was going on? I was so confused. That was tomorrow's schedule, right? Then he sat down in the chair without any suspicion and a big fart sound came. I laughed so much my sides hurt. I couldn't believe it. I do this every year, but they fall for it each time. But hang on, why was everyone so quiet? I looked around and realized I was the only one laughing. Oh, come on, everybody. It was fun. The typical joke for April Fools. Mr. Simons held up the fart pillow and gave me a stern look. "Fleur, I don't expect this behavior from someone your age, especially seeing as it's not even April Fool's Day anymore." And can you believe it? All my classmates agreed with him. No way! Everyone was crazy. No, it is. I know it is. You're all lying, I replied in a panic before I gathered up my stuff and ran out of the classroom. I really needed some space to think this through. It was all so crazy. I couldn't have zoned out for an entire day. Could I? Or the ball hit me so hard that I lost my memory? I remember having dinner, then staying up late to plan out my pranks, and I know I was tired, but no way. They were the crazy ones, not me. Anyway, lab time. I was the last one to walk in, and I sat down at my bench and started on the experiment. I guess I wasn't focusing properly, as I poured the chemical into the beaker, and boom! The next thing I knew, I was covered in this weird green powder stuff. Still, no one was laughing. Instead, they were all staring at me and asking if I was okay. Then Mr. Simons asked them all, "Why is this chemical bottle here? What a mistake!" Embarrassed, I ran to the bathroom to clean my face. Jeez, I looked like the Grinch. It was super tricky to scrub off. Ugh, I hoped I wouldn't be stuck with this color forever. But was it someone's prank on me? But if that's the case, then why did no one laugh? I sure would have laughed at me if I was them. Finally, the green powder started to come off, and then I went back to class. On top of my backpack was a folded-up note with my name on it. Huh. I opened it. Hi, Fleur. There's something important I want to tell you. Meet me in the hall after class. Devon, X. My heart instantly fluttered. I'd had a crush on Devon for forever. But, oh, I got this. This had to be a prank. Everybody knew I liked him, so they did all of this to embarrass me. Devon must be involved this time. I glanced over at him, and he smiled, then gave me this cute wave. Whatever, this was definitely too good to be true. Enough! I wasn't going to let everyone laugh at me anymore. So, as I followed Devon to the hall, I took a sip of water, but I kept it in my mouth. Then, when Devon stopped walking and turned to face me, I squirted the water up into the air like an elephant, then said, "Ha! Gotcha! I'm no fool." He wiped his face onto the back of his sleeve, then looked me straight in the eye and said, "Fleur, I have feelings for you. I waited until today to tell you, as I didn't want to do it yesterday on April Fool's Day, as you'd probably think it was a joke. So why do that to me?" I stared at him speechless. The highlighted words that I'd heard were feelings, yesterday, and April Fool's Day. I started laughing a fake laugh, but then it turned awkward, 'cause his serious expression didn't budge. "You're kidding, right?" I muttered out, but he looked totally devastated. Oh no, I didn't want to upset Devon. I was just confused with days and, as if I actually missed April Fool's Day. What a bummer! I realized my prank had gone too far, and how it could have hurt his feelings, so I blurted out, "Devon, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. It's the concussion. I'm delirious. I'm so sorry." Then came an awkward silence. Suddenly, Devon's sad look changed into a smirk, and he began to laugh. Then everyone jumped out of nowhere and started laughing too. I stood there with a gormless expression on my face. Then Aya appeared and said, "Gotcha!" So it turns out it was actually April the 1st, and I hadn't actually missed a day. Nope, this was Aya's ingenious idea for everyone to get their own back on me. Last night, she created a group on Facebook and added everyone in the class, including the teachers, to plan today's prank. No, this couldn't be possible. I was the pranking queen, not them. Then Aya sidled up to me and said, "Hey Fleur, guess what? It's still April Fool's Day." The next thing I knew, I was grinning at her. Then I play hit her arm and started to laugh. I guess that they had fooled me good. After that, I didn't carry out any more pranks. I was just happy to have a chilled rest of the day. Then, when I was walking home, Devon caught up with me and said, "Fleur, I'm sorry. But actually, not everything was a joke today." I smiled and looked at him. "Oh yeah? So, what's not a joke?" But he just turned tomato red, then rushed away. I stood there blushing as I watched him hurry off. Did this mean Devon really likes me? Interesting. Maybe this April Fool's Day wasn't such a fail after all.
It was just a regular school day, and I was sorting out my locker when suddenly I heard hushed whispers and noticed that everyone else was staring at something. Okay, so turns out it wasn't a something, but a someone, as this pretty girl strutted down the corridor like it was a runway or something. Ugh. Why was everyone gawping at her, rushing over to greet her, and sticking notepads in her face for her to sign? I hugged my books and muttered, "Geez, there's nothing special about her." So, my name's Lily, and I'm just a normal girl. My family, yeah, they're normal. My appearance, normal. And my social status, well, that's just normal too. I coast through life, and that's it. Nothing exciting ever happens to a regular girl like me. Oh, how I long to be the perfect looking girls on Instagram. They're so flawless in their clear skin, stylish clothes, and glossy hair. but those girls were different. They were from different worlds. Oh well, at least I still had my books, my bestie Sarah, and my cute boyfriend Brian. But this all changed when Stacy rocked up at school with her perfect looks and her "I'm so sweet and friendly" routine. Yeah, right. So, what if she had a prettyish face and a bit part in some TV show? Underneath the fake shine, she was clearly not all that. I walked into English class to see her sitting at the desk next to mine. Ugh, great. I couldn't even get to my seat because everyone else was surrounding her, asking her dumb questions such as, "What shampoo do you use?" and "Do you get snack breaks when you film your show?" Geez, give me a break instead. Then, when I finally managed to sit down, she smiled at me and in this sickly sweet voice said, "Hi, I hope it's okay I sit here. I'm Stacy." Yeah, sure. I forced a smile back, but on the inside, my anger was boiling over. Who did this girl think she was? So what if she was beautiful? I bet she only cared about her looks and never bothered studying. Yeah, everyone else would soon realize what a failure she was. Then, one time during recess, Stacy, the living Barbie doll, suggested we start a yearbook, and now everyone's treating her like she's achieved world peace or something. Ugh! You know the worst part of it? I've been saying we should start a yearbook for years, but no one listened to me. And guess who received so many welcome cards and love notes that they fell out of her locker and obstructed the hallway? Yup, Stacy. Gosh! It's been like weeks already. When will these stop? I hated how she thanked everyone and blushed and ugh. I needed to be around a sane person who didn't think the sun shone out of her. She was everywhere. It made me sick. But thank God for lunchtime. It became the only peaceful time of the day for me, when I could hang out with Sarah and not have to worry about Stacy. But, what was this? What was that Barbie doll doing sitting at our table and talking to my best friend? I walked over there and placed my tray down next to Sarah. "Oh, hi, Lily. Stacy just said the funniest thing." "Great," I muttered under my breath. Lunch was an ordeal. Sarah ignored me and kept on asking Stacy dumb questions like, "Is your co-star Kyle as handsome in real life?" And, "How do you style printed skirts with a colored tee?" Yawn! Later that day, due to a paint spillage in art, I was 5 minutes late out. Sarah had agreed to drive me home, but I went out to the parking lot. Her car wasn't there. Then I checked my phone and saw that she'd messaged me. "Where are you? I can't wait anymore. I'll leave first with Stacy. See you tomorrow, X." What? Is she ditching me to give that phony a ride? We had been friends since childhood. How could she be fooled for Stacy's act and just throw away our friendship like that? Angry, I messaged her back, "You abandoned me for Little Miss Popular? How could you? I get it. New one in, old one out. Well, thanks a lot." My phone buzzed with her reply. "Lily, you know it isn't like that. You live up the road from school while Stacy lives much further away and she needed to get back in time to get ready for her filming schedule." Madder than ever, I quickly typed out my reply. "Whatever. It's too bad you'll always be a nobody in her eyes and she's just using you for a free ride." Then I chucked my phone onto my bed. I'd had enough. Sarah had made her choice and it was to be friends with that fake over me. Sarah may have fallen into the Stacy trap, but at least I still had Brian, right? One afternoon, I was talking to him out in the schoolyard when Stacy tottered past. Even her try-too-hard walk was annoying. She smiled over my Brian. Then she deliberately tripped up and dropped the books she was holding. I grabbed Brian's arm to stop him from going over, but he shook himself free from my grip and went over to her anyway. I watched him help her pick her books up, and then she blushed and squeaked out a "Thank you." She was the worst. When he walked back over to me with this big grin on his face, I couldn't take it anymore. So I blurted out to him, "How dare you leave me to help her?" He gave me a confused look.
"Lily, I was just helping her out."
"Yeah, right. You knew she dropped them on purpose to get your attention, but you went over there to her anyway because you think she's prettier than me." He sighed.
"You're being ridiculous. You know what? I can't deal with your selfish, jealous streak anymore. Let's just call it a day. We're done."
Then he walked off. I stood there watching him, expecting expecting him to cool down and come back. Only he didn't. This was all Stacy's fault. She'd stolen my best friend and my boyfriend. No more. It was time to show her that she wasn't so perfect after all. I scrolled through her social media pages for ideas, and it soon became apparent that she loves boys with toned abs who ride motorbikes. How predictable. I discovered this website where I could hire a boy to play with her heart, then ditch her. It's about time she learned how much it sucked to be undesirable and worthless. Ha! I found the perfect guy called Josh. He was 19, a gym addict, and he had a motorbike. Whoa, he was expensive, but it would be worth it, right? I arranged to meet him at the local coffee shop, and geez, he was even more handsome in person. I wished I could use this money to actually make him mine. Sigh. So, the deal is, he's gonna flirt with Stacy, make her love him deeply, and then break up with her. The next Monday, I walked out of school to see Josh parked up to the school gate, holding his helmet and looking like he belonged in a movie. Naturally, every girl was staring at him, but he made a beeline for Stacy. Then, just 1 week later, I saw him picking up Stacy from the school. Whoa! I knew that! I knew I had chosen the right person. Josh was such a lady killer. They looked super close, and I had to remind myself that he was just an actor and he was doing his job. Haha! She was gonna be so heartbroken. But a few weeks later, and he was still picking her up. Huh? Why hadn't he broken up with her yet? So I called him up and asked him what was taking him so long. He replied that he would do it soon. He was just making her fall for him more before he did it. Brutal. Only the weeks passed by and he still hadn't ended it. Then I was walking past the movie theater and I spotted them there, kissing. What? This was not the plan! Furious, I had arranged to meet him the next day at the coffee shop. He walked over and couldn't even meet my eye as he said,
I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I will refund you as soon as I can.
Why? Have you fallen in love with her or something? I said jokingly. There was a long silence. Then he looked down at the table and muttered out,
Yeah, I have.
Why was I the only one on the planet who saw how fake she was? Thanks to her siren ways, I lost my best friend, my boyfriend, and now my savings. This was it. I needed to confront her. The next day at school, I tried finding her, but she was nowhere to be found. Then, as I passed through the school garden, I saw her sitting there. Gotcha! It's time to tell her exactly what I thought of her. I stormed over to her and opened my mouth to speak, but why was she crying? When she saw me, she managed to smile and said, Oh, hi Lily. Is there a chance you could help me? I stared at her with disbelief. Did she think I was under her spell and would do her bidding? But then I saw what she was crying about. In her hands was her English essay with a big F on it. So I replied, why me? You're so smart. You answer all the questions in class correctly. I don't want to be judged on my bad grades. That's why I left my last school. The other kids call me a brainless beauty. I moved here for a fresh start, and now I'm still failing. Okay, so in that moment, I realized that there were things I was good at. My grades were good, and I was pretty great at remembering facts. I'd just been so blinded by jealousy that I lost focus on these things and only saw what I didn't have. None of this was Stacy's fault. She never actually done anything bad to me. I'd made it all up in my head because I was jealous of her. So I sat down next to her and said, No one's gonna call you that because I'll help you study. You will? She gave me a hopeful smile and I nodded. Thank you so much, she flung her arms around me. So that's how Stacy went from being my enemy to my friend. She's actually a really sweet and kind-hearted girl. No wonder why everyone admired her so much. And I was wrong to judge her on her appearance and not give her a fair chance. She's still with Josh and she doesn't know that I hired him to break her heart. But hey, she now has a hunky boyfriend who adores her, so that could be considered compensation, right? Brian and I are still over, but thinking about it, maybe this was for the best. I know I overreacted, but he gave me up so easily, and well, I want to find a guy who won't do that. As for Sarah, I went around to her house with a bag full of her favorite candy, and I apologized for being a jealous jerk. Luckily for me, she forgave me. Now, Sarah, Stacy, and I have become good friends. Sarah and I both help Stacy with her studies, and she gives us fashion tips. And you know what? I've come to realize that I'm pretty after all. I just needed to discover my spark. So finally, I learned that no one's perfect. Perfection is just an illusion. The most important thing is that we feel happy with what we own and never stop improving ourselves. So just be you and let everyone else concentrate on being them.
Scott, I said it's over. You're just too immature for me. He gave me a quizzing look, then said, Huh? What? Babe, we're great together. I rolled my eyes. I just figured I don't need to be with someone with such a childish mentality. I need someone mature and, Whatever, Linda. Find me when you change your mind, he grunted. Then he put his earphones in and walked off. Well, at 15, I needed a guy with a certain maturity, not some loser who still found fart jokes funny. Please. My friends, Patty and Louise, agreed with me. I'm far too popular, pretty, and confident to date just anyone. Anyway, as luck should happen, I was walking along the school corridor when I saw this lost-looking but amazingly handsome guy. Flicking out my hair, I approached him with my friendliest voice. Hey, are you okay? Flustered, he replied, Yes, which way is it to the principal's office? I'm going that way anyway, so I'll show you. This was a blatant lie, as my class was in the other direction, but he didn't know that. Later that day, I walked into physics class with Lewis and stopped dead. Standing at the front of the class was that handsome guy. It turns out he was the substitute teacher, and written on the board behind him was the name Mr. Hulton. My first name is Colin, by the way, he smiled. I whispered to Lewis, Seems like science class has heated up. Then I walked over to my seat. There's no way I could concentrate on the density of materials, not with the hottest teacher ever sharing the same airspace as me. I needed to find a way to get to know him and show him that I wasn't like the other girls my age. Instead, I was far more mature and self-assured than them. So, at the end of class, I walked over and asked him if he'd go over a few things with me. He gladly agreed, so I got to sit down next to him and daydreamed in the scent of his musky cologne. Physics class became my favorite. With my head in my hands, I watched him address the class. He saw me looking at him a few times, but he always quickly looked away. It's okay. I got it. He was just trying to look professional. Then, one time he asked the question, According to Einstein, is light a partial or a wave? I stuck my hand in the air and grinned. He looked a little flustered. Linda? I puckered my lips and looked straight at him. That shirt color really suits you, sir. It brings out your eyes. Some of the other kids in class laughed, and he awkwardly fiddled with his collar. So cute! Then he coughed and said, Linda, do you know the answer? Oh, what was the question again? I stared dreamily at him. Honestly, I couldn't remember anything afterwards but his charmingly severe look. Then one afternoon, Colin asked me to stay behind after class. Result, he must have fallen for this Linda's irresistible charms. Didn't he? I shyly stood before him, and in a serious tone he said, Linda, is everything okay with you? You seem off lately. No, sorry, it's awful. I glumly looked down at my feet and took a few seconds to continue. My family is so poor, and my home life is just horrible. I only have nice things because my friends lend me stuff. His gaze softened. I pretended to dab at my fake tears. Please, don't tell anyone. I couldn't cope with the shame. It's enough just having you to talk to. I smiled at him. Yeah, sure. He looked at me gently and said, Anytime. Oh my. His eyes were so big and blue and, I could drown in them. He obviously liked me too. He just couldn't do anything about it yet, as he was nervous. with him being my teacher and all. But soon he'd realize that me and him were so meant to be, like Ariana Grande and Dalton Gomez. I continued to stay behind after classes so I could talk to Colin about my make-believe terrible home life. He always listened and told me it'd be okay. He was so sweet and sensitive. Then one time, I left Colin's classroom to find Scott there, waiting for me. Ugh. I told him to go away and started walking, but he followed me. So what? You're into old men now? What? I glared at him. Yeah, I'm not stupid. I know you like Mr. Halton. You need to snap out of that dreamland and see he's on a different level to you. Angered by this, I looked him square in the eye and snidely replied, No, Scott, you're the one on a different level to me. About 50 levels down, to be precise. I gave the thumbs down sign. He looked wounded as he turned his back to me and started walking off. He had it coming. I walked outside to see Scott lingering around, talking to Patty and Lewis. They didn't see me, so I overheard Scott say, She can't see how tragic she's being. You know her. She's so stubborn. Of course, Mr. Halton doesn't like her in that way. Ahem. I faked a cough, and they all turned to look at me. I put my hand on my hip and stared them down. Look, I'm sorry, Linda. We're just worried about you. Yeah, this fantasy of yours will hurt you. Ugh, what did they know? I rolled my eyes. For your information, Colin and I are really dating. In fact, he's taking me out tonight, so I can't hang out. I walked off the other way, knowing full well that the looks on their face would be priceless. I know Colin wasn't actually my boyfriend, yet, but I knew it would happen soon. It was written in the stars. The next day, as I walked into school, I noticed some of the other kids whispering to each other and pointing at me. Okay, weird. Maybe it was my new dress or something. I bought it because it was an exact colored match to Colin's eyes. But things got weirder in physics class, because as soon as Colin walked in, everybody started giggling. Colin looked confused and said, Okay, what's so funny? Then this girl, Sally, shyly muttered out, Sir, we heard you have a new girlfriend. He raised an eyebrow. Yes, that's correct. How do you know? He gave a nervous laugh. Actually, this shirt is a gift from her. I felt the entire class's eyes turn to me. Well, except for Colin's. I tried to keep my cool, but inside I was fuming. How dare some other woman steal my man and force him to wear that hideous shirt? I knew I needed to keep up the lie, so after class I walked over to Lewis and Patty and said, How cute does Colin look in that shirt? They both frowned at me. Then Patty replied, So you really are dating him? Yep, I gave a nod. Right. She gave a skeptical look. They all needed to realize that Colin and I were the real deal. So I bought a box of candy and cut out a heart-shaped tag saying, Love you, honey, with my candy floss scented gel pen. I did feel kinda nervous as I walked over to him, but our love was meant to be. Hi, Linda. Can I help you? I got you this. I placed the gift down on his desk. He read the note and his face fell. Then, in a firm voice, he said, Look, Linda, this is wrong. No, I shook my head. I know you like me. Linda, please, you're my student. You're just a child. No, we're meant to be together. You love me. I know you do. I don't, he said sternly. Now please leave. He rejected me? This had to be down to his new girlfriend. She was obviously poisoning his mind, as there was no way he couldn't like me. I wasn't leaving the room until he admitted he loved me too. So, crying, I sat down on the floor and folded my arms. Right at that moment, Patty and Louise rushed into the room and helped me up. Then they stared daggers at Colin as they led me out into the corridor. Turned out they'd followed me and observed through the window. How embarrassing. Thinking quick, I blubbered out, He's such a jerk. I devoted all of myself to him, but he's bored of me now, so he dumped me. Just like that. My friends comforted me as they told me he wouldn't get away with it. There's no way I could face Colin again just yet. So, I feigned being sick and stayed home. Only when I returned to school, he wasn't there. Then, the principal called me to their office. I walked in to see both my parents sitting there with devastated looks on their faces. Oh no. What was going on? Sweetie, we're sorry for not protecting you more. Mom looked over at me with glassy eyes. Then the principal said, Mr. Halton has been fired, and the police are investigating him. Rest assured, nothing like this will happen again. Huh? Colin had been fired? Why? Then the reality hit me. It was because they thought he'd been having a relationship with me. I muttered out, "No, you've got it all wrong. Nothing happened." "Linda, I know this is difficult, but he's a bad man." It didn't matter what I said. They remained convinced that I was so manipulated by Colin that I'd say anything to clear his name. Straight after the meeting, I found Patty and Louise, and they confessed that they hated seeing me so upset, so they'd told the principal about me and Colin. I took a deep breath, then I blurted out, "But I made it up! All of it!" Of course, they were super angry with me for lying, but after bearing their tantrums for some 30 minutes, they agreed to help me clear his name. So, they went to the cop station with me, and we told them everything. It worked, as Colin had his name cleared, but unsurprisingly, he never came back to teach at my school. The three of us were suspended from school, and my parents grounded me for a month. Patty and Louise are still my friends, but I can see they don't trust me anymore. Anytime I tell them anything, they give each other these, "yeah, right" looks. I feel so guilty for everything I did. It was never meant to go that far, but I now realize that my childish behavior almost cost a good man his future. I wish I could apologize to Colin in person, but I know I'll never get a chance to. Please be careful with your words, as they could ruin someone's career, life, everything. If, like me, you adore your teacher, then please just respect them, be nice, and let them be.
Finally, I'm out of that morbid place. Now let me tell you, sharing a cell with a dozen other noisy, stinky, grumpy dudes ain't fun. Anyway, here I am, free as a bird now. So no one's here to pick me up. Suppose I'd have to call Mom. It took me a few seconds to familiarize myself with my phone. Jeez, it'd been 4 years. It was a miracle I hadn't turned into one of those leg-cradling crazy dudes. How I ended up in there in the first place was a joke. All I did was take some stuff from 1 or 2 warehouses and sell them on. No big deal. "Yo, Mom, it's your boy Cole. I'm out, and yeah, I need a lift home." I spoke the moment I heard Mom's voice. "Cole, Do you have any idea what hell your actions have put your mother through?" My dad was so good at overreacting, but I needed somewhere to stay, so I could handle him. "But Dad, Mom, come on, I'm still your son. You have the heart to see me homeless and sleeping next to rats?" There was a brief pause. Then Dad grunted, "You can stay for a few weeks, but only for your mother's sake." "Thanks, Dad. You're the man." Bingo. My parents were like putty in my hands. This was the life. I played video games all day, then partied all night. Then one night, I was getting ready to meet my friend Moose, when Mom told me that the pizza delivery guy was at the door. I shouted down to her, "You can shout me this one, and I'll get the next." I finished getting ready, and I must say, I was looking smooth. I strode down into the kitchen and grabbed a slice of pizza. Dad was sitting there glaring at me over his report. "If you can't afford to pay for items, then I suggest you don't order them." He looked at the pizza slice in my hand. Mom walked up behind him and placed her hands on his shoulders. "Darling, give him some more time. He's still adjusting to outside life." "Thanks, Mom. You're the greatest." I gave her a greasy pizza kiss on the cheek. Any chance you can lend me some dough?" Dad shook his head and sighed, while Mom went over to her purse and passed me some money. Hey, there'd be plenty of time to get a job and be responsible. Right now, I had 4 years of lost time to make up for. Once, I borrowed Dad's car. I swear I only had a couple of beers, but the world glitched out and went all blurry. The next thing I know, I'd driven straight into the neighbor's front yard. Oops. I opened my eyes the next morning to a killer headache, so all I wanted was some black coffee and a plate full of bacon. But I got Dad's death stare instead. "Just when I think you can't get any more irresponsible, you took my car without asking, drank too much, then drove into Gloria's beloved rose bushes." "Chill out, Dad. I'll fix it later," I said as I raided the fridge for food. "You're not the one having to pay for the damages. We've made our decision. You have 1 week to get out of our house." Now hold up. I had 0 places to go. I couldn't stay with Moose, as he was crashing in his sister's garage, and I didn't know anyone else. How could they? I gotta chill a bit. So I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through dating apps. Then I matched with this stunning blonde called Trudy. She's a little older than me, but her family is rolling in dough, and also, she has her own business. Not only that, but she's hotter than an agitated dragon. So yeah, her photos seemed a little grainy, but guess the retro trend was in. Looks like I had it both ways, love and money. I have quite a face. But since I love beer and pizza, and without any dedication for the gym, I don't have the perfect body. But I needed to keep this girl interested. So I told her I was a tall dude with an impressive six-pack, who just graduated and was on the lookout for a girl with brains as well as beauty. This girl was actually pretty easy to talk to. She sent me pictures of her latest purchases, like phones, expensive watches, and designer clothes, along with the promise that when we started dating in person, she'd buy me whatever I wanted. Result: after 4 days of face pics and my priceless conversation, Trudy was smitten, and she sent me a message saying, "Cole, I haven't known you long, but I know how I feel. I love you. X." Okay, that's really fast, but yeah, I've won the lottery over here. Hey, maybe she lied about her look too, but it didn't matter. She's rich. So I replied to her, "I know, babes. I feel it too. X." We immediately arranged to meet in person and decided on a yellow dress code. I looked around the park trying to spot this gold mine, but all I could see was some old lady in a yellow dress. Okay, coincident, but why is she heading my way? The closer she got toward me, the wider her grin was. Cole, right? It's me, Trudy. What? No. How come this corny, overweight, wrinkly old lady be Trudy? I was expecting the blonde beauty from the photos, not Big Bird. Once I got over the initial shock, we sat down and talked. Turns out my dream girl was in her 50s. All the descriptions and photos of her were true, but 30 years ago. She was clearly in the middle of a midlife crisis or something. "You're not the same either," she sneered. "You're barely taller than me. And where's the gym body?" All right, fair enough. I fake smiled. "Yeah, despite you looking different, I still find you very beautiful." That night, I tossed and turned. This was all so unexpected. Trudy was totally not my type. But dating her might not hurt. She was rich. And also, I had to move out tomorrow. So at least she'd pay for me. With that, I sent her a message. "Babe, you're beautiful, and I want to make us official. X." The next day, I moved in with Trudy. Now, let me tell you something. Her apartment was lavish. It was full of the latest tech. Crazy. Seeing as she was so old, she probably didn't know how to use them. She worked a lot, so most of the time I was home alone. And I was free to watch cartoons and movies, munch on potato chips, and play as many video games as I felt like. One time, I was watching a movie when the door opened. And in stepped this glary-eyed dude. I shouted at him, "Hey dude, you have the wrong apartment." He tutted and said, "I can assure you that I don't. I'm Alex, Trudy's son, and you must be Cole. I would say it's a pleasure to meet my mother's gold-digging boyfriend in the flesh, but unfortunately, it's not." What? Trudy has a son? And by the looks, he's even older than me. And how dare he called me a gold digger? I suppose I was, but still, he had no right to call me it. Even worse, he refused to leave. He just sat in the kitchen and waited for his mom to return. Then he had a heated argument with her in which he referred to me as a loser and a bum. Things weren't any better with my parents either. Dad told me to be independent and get a real job, not a sugar mama. And Mom was just crying. Whatever. This was their fault for kicking me out in the first place. What did they expect me to do? Live under a bridge? Few days after I met Alex, Trudy insisted on dragging me along to his lame work launch thing. As soon as I got there, I went straight to the food. I was stuffing a mini quiche into my mouth when this girl walked up alongside me and said, "Great minds think alike." I gave her a gormless look. Then she pointed at the food. We both headed straight for the food. I laughed at that. This girl was funny. And hot. Really hot. Her name is Beatrice, and she works for that loser Alex. After that, I started seeing a lot more of this Beatrice girl, as she often popped over with Alex. And while he was arguing with his mom, usually about me, I chatted to her. That was how I found out she wasn't having it easy either. She was behind on her rent because her truant brother had stolen the money and spent it all. I felt bad for her, so I took the envelope full of cash that Trudy had given to me, and I handed it to her. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to buy anything new for a few weeks, but it was worth it just to know that she'd be okay. Truth was, I was really falling for Beatrice, but I couldn't do anything about it, as I was with Trudy, and I was relying on her handouts. Soon, things became stinky. I came out of the shower to see Trudy standing there with my phone in her hand. "How could you?" she threw it at me. Yeah, so she'd read all of the messages I'd sent to Moose, saying how I didn't find her remotely attractive and I was only with her for a free ride. "Trudes, my babes, come on, those messages were just me joking," I laughed. "I was just messing around." "Shut up, you liar! You find me hideous. Alex was right. You were only using me for my money, and worse, you never went to college. Instead, you were in jail." I was about to lay on the cold charm when Alex and Beatrice bursted into the room. Alex shouted at me, "How lowlife you are! What a shameless gold digger! It's appalling. I've told her to report you to the cops." Beatrice interrupted. "No, don't do that. What Cole did was wrong, but he's not all that bad. Please." I was so moved. Took a look around. Trudy was crying. Alex was so furious his eyes were bulging. And Beatrice, well, she just looked disappointed. I then packed my stuff and left in shame. Well, that was a few months ago, and I have a decent job now. Even though I live back at home, I pay my way, and I'm saving up to put a deposit down on my own place. I never should have used Trudy like that. She might be old, but she still has feelings, and the way I treated her wasn't right. I was undeniably a douchebag back then. All I want is to have a happy life with Beatrice. I really love her, which is why I asked her to be my girlfriend, but she rejected me. Man, it stung, but I'm not giving up. Perhaps she might give me a chance once she sees I've changed. I can't fix the past. All I can do now is improve myself and keep on rolling forward. "So, who knows the answer to this?" the teacher asked. The whole class was silent as they looked down at their desks and scratched their heads. Suddenly a hand was raised. Yes, it was me. Just me. In fact, physics was my forte subject, so the question on the board didn't baffle me, so I gave an in-depth answer. The teacher looked surprised, then she smiled at me and said, "It looks like we have a budding Einstein in our midst." All this praise was a little embarrassing. Also, I noticed that all the girls in the class were looking at me with admiring eyes. Meanwhile, I overheard one boy whisper, "Where did this robot come from?" I unconsciously glanced over at Vivien. She was sitting in the corner of the classroom and even she was gawping over at me. Meeting my gaze, she immediately pouted and looked away. For the rest of the day, I continued to impress my teachers and classmates. In English Lit, I recited a verse from Twelfth Night. And in math, I wrote down the formula for pi on the board. Hey, being smart has its highlights, and it was good to get recognition for my brains. I'd already been recruited into both the physics club and the quiz team. Hey, turned out this new school was not that bad. I'm Easton, and if you haven't seen part 1 of my story, I advise you to go and check it out. So, I'm only at this elite school because my sister Grace is marrying an older rich man named Owen. Then there's Vivien, Owen's daughter. I haven't quite worked her out yet, but she seems like trouble. As the first days went, mine was a success, so I was grinning as I walked toward the bus stop. Suddenly, a girl caught up with me and patted me on the shoulder. "Hey, I'm Lila. We're in the same class." "Hi, Lila. I'm Easton." I smiled at her. "You're so good at, well, everything," she giggled. "So, I like physics too. I think we should study together sometime." She chewed on her lip as she twizzled a strand of her hair around her finger. "Yes, sure." Suddenly, a nudge distracted me. "Vivien." She swaggered past us, then looked back at me and pouted. Seeing this, Lila rolled her eyes and tutted out, "That girl is such a nuisance. I'd recommend you steer clear of the likes of her." I nodded at Lila's words, but kept my eyes on Vivien. At that moment, bump. Vivien, with her head so high, striking her arrogant walk, had crashed straight into some nerd who was walking while looking at his phone. I winced as I watched her fall on top of him, and his phone flung away and smashed as it hit the ground. She blushed and scrambled to get up, frantically took out the money from her wallet and stuffed it into the boy's hand and hurried away. Huh? What an obnoxious girl, Lila snarked. Thinking daddy's money solves everything? How ignorant. Sigh. I can only give her a shrug hearing those words, then quickly made my excuses about having to catch my bus. That night, I was watching Mythbusters on TV in the living room when I suddenly saw Grace running out of the bathroom screaming. Her skin had these red patches all over it, and she was crying out how there were dog hairs on her towel. At that moment, Vivien passed us. She looked Grace up and down, then smirked and said, "Oh my, our model looks like a lobster today." Grace was so angry that she somehow managed to turn even redder. "Vivien, you dare? Just you wait." After that, Grace burst into the office and dragged Owen into the living room. Oh man, it was really serious this time. "Owen, look at me. I'm hideous and it's down to that spiteful child." She pointed at a still smirking Vivien. "These tricks of hers are unacceptable." She shook her arm vigorously, then stomped her feet on the floor. Owen frowned at Vivien, but she didn't show any guilt. Instead, she just shrugged and said, "I have no idea what she's talking about." The atmosphere in the house was so tense that I literally couldn't breathe. Seeing this, Grace continued, "Honey, it's time we sent her to boarding school. The teachers there will be better equipped to manage her and help her change." Owen listened attentively, then nodded. Vivien's smirk dropped, and she glared at Grace, then turned to Owen and said harshly, "Dad, why do you always listen to her? She's just an outsider. I'm your daughter." "Okay, let's take it slow. I'll see what's the best for you." Then he turned to Grace and said softly, "Come on, darling, let's go get you some medicine." Then he led Grace to their bedroom. I thought that the threat of boarding school would change Vivien, but no. It only seemed to entice her more. One day during dinner, Owen's phone rang. He went out of the room to answer it, and when he returned, his face was all scrunched up in anger. Then he slammed his fist on the table. "Vivien, you're causing trouble again? How dare you break in and steal stuff from the chemistry lab?" I really have no words." She didn't respond, still focused on her plate, which drove Owen even madder. He shouted, "Your teacher said if you make any more minor mistakes, they'll expel you. Is that what you want?" "Oh my God, expelled from school? That would bring shame to our family," Grace added. Vivien glared at Grace, but she still continued. "I did tell you to send her to boarding school, but you refused." Then suddenly, her eyes lit up as if she had just come up with some crazy idea. Then she turned to look at me with a smile that sent chills down my spine. "Ah, I know. Easton's a top student, and he's in most of Vivien's classes, isn't he? So he can supervise her. Maybe there will be good results." "What? No way!" Vivien and I shouted in unison. While I was silently cursing Grace's crazy idea, Owen seemed quite amused by it. "Yeah, that sounds good." "No way! Who the hell is he to monitor me?" "Well, if you don't like it, then I suggest you go up to your room and start packing for boarding school." Vivien didn't say anything else, just sulked and stormed back to her room. Owen shook his head wearily, then told me to go have a little talk with him in his office. "Easton, please help me keep an eye on Vivien. Honestly, I don't want to send her away to a boarding school, but I can't sit around and wait for her to be expelled either." This put me in a dilemma here. I didn't want any involvement with this stubborn girl, but I couldn't say no to Owen. Seeing me hesitate, he continued, "Please, she's a good kid. She's just had a tough time and she's so angry at everything. She's so angry at me." And yeah, you guess it, I gave in and agreed to help him. Then he immediately listed off a series of tasks. Don't let Vivien get anything lower than a C. Don't let her hang out with any bad friends, including Carter, her current unpleasant boyfriend. Follow her closely and don't let her break any school rules. Make sure she takes studying seriously for once. These sounded simple, right? For normal people, maybe, but Vivien was far from normal. Instead, she was troublesome, cunning, and uncooperative. I had no idea how I was going to convince a rebel like Vivien to abide by any of these rules. But I'd told Owen I'd help. So now I had to stick to my word. So from then on, I officially became Vivien's tutor and butler. I had to tutor her every day, keep an eye on her 24/7, and of course, put up with her mischievous pranks to escape my management. Please, focus! Why do you keep on staring out the window and daydreaming when the exams are right around the corner? I got really mad at Vivien. I don't want to, but I have a headache, so I just can't concentrate. She wasn't fooling me with that fake pity face. I immediately pulled a tablet of aspirin out of my shirt pocket and tossed my head to signal her to take it so that she could keep studying. Vivien was dumbfounded, picked up her pen, and started doing the homework. But within just less than 5 minutes, she turned to me and asked, "Hey, Easton, do you like playing games?" I flipped the pages of the book and reluctantly said yes. Clearly, she was just waiting for that, as she immediately took out her Nintendo Switch, excitedly gave it to me and said, "So you can play this, and I'll sleep for a bit. I stayed up so late last night watching movies. When the time's up, just tell my dad that we finished studying." Before I can say anything, she'd already jumped onto her bed and wrapped herself in blanket. Ugh, so frustrating. But then an idea popped in my head. Well, then let's change the learning method. Language shower. How does that sound? Then I reached for the mini speaker on the table, played a Spanish audio lesson at the highest volume, and placed it right by her ears. She quickly covered her head with a pillow, but I didn't give up and continued pushing the speaker close. After rolling around in bed for a while, she finally admitted defeat, and with a frowning face, went back over to the desk and said, "Okay, just stop this crazy torture right away, please. You want me to sit here and study, right?" I folded my arms and smiled smugly. Ha! This girl is not that hard to handle. I didn't share Vivien's carefree attitude. Instead, I was so anxious that she would fail her exams and I'd get the blame. I even had to beg her, "Hey, please, focus on studying literature, please. If you get an F, then I will be dead meat." "Huh? That's none of my business," Vivien sneered. I desperately passed her my essay. "Here, I've already prepared this for your reference. You just have to memorize it." She quickly scanned it once, then dropped it down on the table and replied, "Nah, you can learn it by yourself. I have better things to do." Helplessly, I picked up the essay and read it out loud. I read it again and again, with the hope that while she was polishing her nails, she could remember a few sentences. At first, Vivien seemed annoyed, but then she giggled and said, "Okay, let me learn on my own. Your poor face looks so funny." What a miracle! She actually started reading through the notes, but to be honest, I didn't expect much. But you know what? The most unexpected thing happened. When we were standing outside of the school gates, she showed me her exam results. B's and C's, and not one D. Man, this felt even better than when I got an A+. Well, almost. I was about to congratulate her when I heard someone shout her name. Then I turned around to see some kids walking over to her. Oh no. Were these the bad influences Owen told me to keep her away from?
Oh my God, Evan, let's get married on April 3rd. What? Are you serious? Yeah, look. Then she waved her phone in my face. On the screen was some article about choosing special dates to get married. It's 04/03/21. We could get married anyways, right? So why not choose a unique date? And you'll never forget our wedding anniversary. But babe, that's 3 days away. How are we going to arrange a wedding in such a short time? She jumped to her feet. We will marry on this special date. Then she ran off upstairs. She was kidding, right? As this idea was insane. Oh, by the way, that was Mila, my girlfriend. And I'm Evan, and we've been dating for over a year now. I didn't give any more thought to her mad idea, but then later I saw her making all these calls to wedding locations and everything. And that's when I realized she wasn't kidding. Unsurprisingly, all the local wedding venues were fully booked for that date. So Mila came up with a crazy plan. We would drive to the wedding capital of the world, Vegas. My God, this was lunacy. But Mila wouldn't take no for an answer, so it was settled. We were going to Vegas, baby. There's one problem. We live in Alaska, so the trip would take us about 2 days and 16 hours. We called into work to take a few days off, and then we woke up super early and began our long journey to Vegas. I have to admit that I was kind of excited about our adventure, but little did we know how many ridiculous situations we would come across on our way. We started the journey at 5:30, and only a few hours in, Mila got peckish, so she started munching on our snack supply. Later on, I was craving potato chips too, so I asked her to feed me some. But to my horror, none of the snacks were left, and we hadn't even crossed city limits yet. That's not humanly possible. Then, when we reached the highway, she suddenly said she needed a pee. I stopped at the nearest service station, but she didn't go to the restroom. Instead, she turned to me and said, "Actually, since we're here now, why don't we go grab some lunch?" Excuse me? But it was 10 a.m. And didn't she just eat all our snacks? I knew it was pointless arguing with a hungry girl, so I just followed her. After that, we hit the road again. I was getting a bit bored, so I reached for my phone to turn on some Post Malone, but Mila stopped me and said that she had something far more interesting. The audio novel To All the Boys I've Ever Loved Before. Jesus. It was so boring that it almost sent me to sleep. So for the safety of our lives and the lives of other drivers, I decided to stop at a motel to get some sleep. Besides, I couldn't endure hearing any more of Laura Jean and this guy Peter. The next day after breakfast at a diner, we were walking to our car when Mila suddenly saw a pregnant woman loading stuff into her trunk. She immediately ran over to the lady, then told me to do the heavy loading while she just stood there and chatted to her. Suddenly, the lady touched her stomach and said that she wasn't feeling well. Oh my God, don't tell me that she was gonna... Oh boy, her water broke! Quick, we need to get her in your car and take her to the hospital! My car? What if the baby comes out? But Mila didn't listen and was already helping the lady get into the back seat. My God, I hope the baby didn't slip out too soon or else I'd have to burn my car. Let me drive. You sit in the back with her. Her husband isn't here, so she needs a man for emotional support. What? That sounded absurd, but there was no time to argue. The lady began to scream because of the pain. I tried to calm her down by telling her to breathe in and out, but she just shouted, "Shut up!" Then held my hand and squeezed it really hard. Oh my God, she was going to break my fingers like toothpicks. It hurt so much I began to scream with her. Thank God we got the lady to the hospital on time. Phew, I couldn't imagine what would happen to my hand and my car if the baby had arrived any sooner. So the journey continued. As we were driving through Fort Nelson, I saw a guy holding a sign asking for a ride to the nearest service station. Of course, I ignored the dude and wanted to drive past him, but my girl Mila over here just couldn't seem to brush that aside. She made me stop the car and warmly welcomed him into our car. Ugh, that was so annoying. While I was driving, I smelled something really awful. My God, it was so smelly that I couldn't breathe. It had to be this dude. I gave Mila an angry glare, but she just gave me a guilty smile back. Well, at least she had to suffer too. I had no choice but to open the windows on a highway. Mila clutched her head as she shouted, "Are you crazy? Close the windows! The wind is ruining my hair!" Oh my God, was her hair more important than her nose? Thank God, after 30 minutes, we reached a service station and the guy got out of my car. I went to the restroom to freshen myself up, and when I came back, Mila was nowhere to be found. I was about to call her, but oh man, I left my phone in the car and she had the keys. After 45 minutes of searching, I gave up and went back to the car to find her sitting there, her arms folded as she glared at me. Where have you been? You do realize we have a tight schedule to keep." What? Was she serious? Then I suddenly heard someone coughing in the back. I turned around and to my horror saw a little boy sitting there. Why was there a kid in my car? Mila explained that his school bus had left without him and we needed to take him to his camping location. Not again, Mila. Why does she have to be that sweet little angel who couldn't help but have to help everybody? But my God, now there was not the time to be Charlie's Angels and rescue that little kid. I told her, but she immediately accused me of being heartless, cruel, and everything. Jesus. That's the third person I'd given a free ride to today. As I was driving to the camping location, the kid suddenly felt nauseous. I shouted at him to hold it as we were on the highway, and it was impossible to stop. But he started to make vomit sounds. Mila freaked out, so she grabbed something and let the kid throw up in there. After I found a place to stop, I turned around and saw that Mila threw all my stuff out and used my precious Nike duffel bag as a vomit bag. That's it. I'd had enough. So I shouted at the kid, "Get out of my car!" He got so scared that he ran out and started crying really loudly. That wasn't cool. He's just a scared little kid. How would you like it if your school bus left you behind? Okay, maybe I was a bit harsh on the kid. You can't blame me. It'd been a long couple of days, and that was my favorite bag, but still, I went outside to comfort the kid. Hey, please don't cry. I'm really sorry for earlier. I didn't mean to shout at you. I'm just really tired from all that driving. The kid stopped crying, but still looked very scared of me. So I said, hey, if you give me a smile, I promise to buy you some candy later. He immediately smiled and hugged me. Oh great, I was sure Mila didn't wipe his mouth clean after all that throwing up, as I got some vomit stains on my shirt. But hey, the hug kind of felt nice. We dropped the kid off and his teachers were very grateful. But because of everything we'd been through today, there was no way we could rest in a motel and make it on time to Vegas. So the only option was to drive through the night, so Mila took the wheel so I could catch some Z's. A honking sound startled me and I sat up and saw that we were going at a snail's pace. Mila, what's wrong? You're driving slower than my granny. I think we're lost. What? Why didn't she wake me up? Then, oh no, we suddenly heard a cop siren. And guess why we were pulled over? Yup, for driving too slowly in a 60-mile-an-hour zone. My God, I was freaking out. But Mila turned to me and said, just keep quiet and I'll do the talking. She opened the window and began to speak in a weird way. Hi, officer, did I do something wrong? Can I see your license, please? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Here you go, Officer Good-Looking. It's Goodlin. Oh, sorry, my mistake. Please don't look at my picture. I was having a bad hair day when I took it. Oh, dear God, was she actually flirting with the cop? He looked at her license with a frown on his face. Oh, no, we'd end up being locked up. Well, Miss Forrester, I think you look great in this picture. I'll let you off with a warning this time, but please be more careful. Driving at 20 in a 60-mile-an-hour zone is more dangerous than it sounds. Oh my God, thank you so much. Today must be my lucky day. I'm stopped by not only a very handsome but also kind-hearted officer. If I don't get married tomorrow, I will definitely get your number. My God, I think he gets it. After that, I didn't talk to her the whole night. How could she flirt with another man right in front of me? And now we had less than 16 hours to get to Vegas and get married. So we grabbed a quick breakfast from a diner, then carried on driving. On the plus side, we finally crossed the Canadian border. We were in Montana, baby. Then Mila turned to me and grumbled out, FYI, you forgot to close the window again. Anything could have crawled inside while we were at that diner. Ugh, was she serious? I didn't have the time nor the patience for this, so I just nodded to let it go. We sat in silence, but suddenly I heard squeaking. No way was that Mila. Oh my God, something must be in my car. I pulled over and looked in the back seat to see a skunk jumped out right at me. We both screamed and got out of the car. While I was trying to think of a way to get rid of it, Mila suddenly pointed. Do you realize the car is rolling down that hill? I turned around and the car was really moving. I must have forgotten to pull the handbrake. We chased after it, but luckily it rolled into a muddy patch. I looked inside and phew, at least the skunk had gone. I tried driving away, but the car made an awful sound and only seemed to sink lower into the mud. So I went outside to push the car, and Mila switched to the driver's seat, but then mud splashed everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. I called out for her to stop, but guess what? She didn't hear me over the music, she just had to play. Unbelievable. While here I was, covered in dirt. But, well, as annoying as the loud music was, the weekend's blinding lights kind of boosted me up somehow, which made me push the car as hard as I could. And yes, it got out of the mud. I was tired, dirty, hungry, and I just wanted to get to Vegas in one piece. Was that too much to ask? I think God heard my prayers, because we made it to Las Vegas, baby. And it was 11:30 p.m. I had about 10 minutes to shower and change, but Mila insisted that we go straight into the chapel. My God, Mila. I looked like I'd been wrestling John Cena in a mud bath. We ran towards the reception, and when I looked at my watch, it was 11:45 p.m. Oh my God, I couldn't believe we'd made it. The past 3 days felt like 3 freaking months. Hi, it's 040321, and we're here to get married. The reception frowned at us, then said, Sorry, sweetie, but it's the 4th. Then she pointed at the calendar on her desk. Huh? Had we jumped time or something? Then I had a light bulb moment. Nevada is 1 hour ahead of Alaska. My God, we totally forgot about that. It was already April 4th. Mila looked devastated, and I was feeling a bit down about it too. But if I really had been a groom with this muddy look, I never would have dared look at the wedding pictures ever. Moreover, after everything we've been through on this trip, I think it's best we get to know each other a bit more before we get married. I'm already happy with what we're having right now, so no need to rush, right?
Now, where is her turquoise scarf? That will definitely complete my look. I was raiding Mom's closet to find it when I accidentally dropped a belt on the floor. But strangely enough, it made a really weird sound. So I gave it a few knocks. Wait, it did sound like the ground was hollow. I took a closer look. And oh my God, there was a hidden hatch or something in my mom's closet. Of course, I had to figure this out. So after a few attempts, I finally managed to open it and found a big wooden box. Why was she keeping something a secret from us? I took a deep breath and I opened the box. There were some old pics of my mom when she was younger, an old teddy bear, and some cassette tapes. Why on earth did she have to hide these? I dug even deeper and found a stack of letters. All of them were from the same address. Hang on, I knew that place. It was an orphanage just outside the city. So far, nothing made sense to me, so obviously I had to read them. They were all from this orphanage sister called Anna Maria. She kept writing about some girl named Eliza, and the more I read, I eventually realized that this girl, Eliza, was my mom's daughter. That meant I had a half-sister? I couldn't believe it. And from the sounds of things, my mom hadn't seen Eliza since the day she'd dropped her at the orphanage. So my mom didn't even know what she looked like after all these years? This was insane! How could Mom have done this? Not to mention the fact my dad is a politician, so I'd been raised to always be a good person, just like them. But after what I just found out, I didn't know what to believe anymore. This is so absurd. But one thing was for sure, I had to find Eliza. The next day after school, I went to the orphanage. I told Anna Maria everything, and then she said that Eliza had left when she turned 18, but that she came back every weekend to help out. She then gave me Eliza's home address. I followed Google Maps and ended up in a seriously creepy neighborhood. As I knocked on her door, a billion questions ran through my head. What if she didn't want anything to do with us? What if she hated me because I stole this great life that was supposed to be hers? But there was no backing down now. As soon as the door opened, I froze. Could this really be my half-sister? Standing there was this tall, mysterious-looking girl. I was trembling as I said, "Hi, are you Eliza?" She just gave me a skeptic look, then replied, "Why? Who are you?" I couldn't hold back my tears and said, "I can't believe I found you. I'm Alicia, your half-sister." Eliza looked shocked and then said, "Oh, okay, calm down. Come on in, then we'll talk." I sat on the couch and told her everything. Then she began to tell me how miserable her life was, how she worked 4 jobs and it still wasn't enough to pay the bills. Gosh, I felt so guilty hearing all of this. How was it fair that I had a carefree, happy life and she'd been left all alone? I couldn't leave Eliza like that. I had to do something. After that, I rushed home and dragged Mom to my room so I could speak to her privately. I confronted her, and at first she denied it, but she eventually burst into tears and admitted everything. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard the whole story. When she was 18, she'd given birth to Eliza, but Eliza's dad wouldn't take any responsibility. So my mom decided to raise Eliza on her own. It was tough for her, as she didn't have a decent job. Then after about 6 months, my dad appeared and showed interest in her, and because he came from a wealthy family, my mom jumped at the chance to be with him. However, she thought that if he knew about Eliza, he wouldn't be keen. So with a heavy heart, she decided to send Eliza to the orphanage. Ever since then, she'd sent a letter to Anna Maria every year on Eliza's birthday. But she asked her not to send any photos of Eliza, as it was too painful to see. I couldn't believe my mom gave up her daughter for money. I begged my mom to meet up with Eliza. She at least owed her that. I explained how miserable Eliza's life was and how she didn't deserve that. Finally, my mom agreed. So the next day, she picked me up from school and we went to Eliza's. As soon as my mom saw her, they were hugging and crying, and my mom was shocked at the shabby state of Eliza's place and immediately told her to come live with us. Oh, wow, Mom! I'm glad that we're reunited, but wasn't that decision too impulsive? What about Dad? Well, of course, he was super shocked. My mom sat him down and explained who Eliza was, but he didn't take it well, and they ended up getting into a huge fight, which resulted in my dad moving out. I couldn't believe it. So, from that moment on, it was just me, my mom, and Eliza. I missed my dad so much, but it felt kind of nice to suddenly have a sister. I'd always wanted a sibling. We could hang out together, gossip, go shopping. OMG! This was going to be so much fun. But turns out it wouldn't be as fun as I'd hoped. One night, Eliza was watching a movie. I sat down next to her and said, "Oh man, I love this movie, but I can't stand the female lead. Her voice is so annoying." I turned to check on Eliza's reaction, but she stayed stiff as a board. So I continued. "In fact, she sounds just like my friend Kayla." Still no replying from Eliza. In fact, she didn't even look at me. Was she even listening? Well, clearly she was, because a few days later, my friends came over, including Kayla. And when Eliza passed us, she said, "Bet that annoying Kayla girl you told me about isn't here, right?" Oh my God. I literally froze. How could she say that right in front of everyone? In front of Kayla? I was mortified. And the worst part was that Kayla didn't want to be my friend anymore after that. Even my other friends stopped hanging out with me. They thought I was just another mean girl. And that wasn't all. Eliza started acting really weird. One day I came home from school to find her in my bedroom looking at my old photos. Then when she saw me, she said in a creepy voice, "You're so lucky you weren't abandoned like me." My God, that gave me chills. Then later that night, I overheard her asking our mom if she could get an allowance to make up for lost time. Oh, wow. But that was only fair, right? Well, the next day, I couldn't find my fave lipstick. And given that Eliza recently had unannounced visits to my room, I went to ask her. But she just shrugged and said, "Yeah, I took it. So what?" Whoa. Since when did she become so rude? Hang on, she was also wearing my floral dress. That was it. I'd had enough. I went straight to my mom and told her what Eliza had done. I expected my mom to be on my side, but she wasn't. She told me to be more understanding as Eliza wasn't used to being around other people, so she needed some time to adapt. That's ridiculous. And then it got even worse. She started to target my dad. "You should divorce him. The way he just left you like that, what an awful husband," she told my mom when the two of them were preparing dinner. "You could claim ownership of everything. You just need to prove that he's cheating on you, or that he's corrupt or something. I mean, he's a politician, so I'm sure he's doing at least one of those things." I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stormed into the room and started shouting at Eliza to stop trash-talking my dad. Then I turned to Mom. "Don't listen to her poisoned lies." But Mom just sighed and replied, "Eliza isn't entirely wrong. Your dad did just leave us, and he hasn't even called. Clearly, he's having an affair." OMG, that snake was brainwashing my mom. A few days later, I saw an article that my dad was charged for corruption. How was that even possible? My dad is a good man. There must be a misunderstanding or something. Could it be something to do with Eliza? "It was you, wasn't it? You accused my dad of corruption." I stormed in and screamed at Eliza. My mom was shocked and said, "Alicia, what are you talking about?" So I told my mom that Eliza must have planned this, and my mom said, "Don't be absurd. She has nothing to gain from that. Stop speaking nonsense and apologize to Eliza." Mom, I think I know what this is about. Alicia hates me, so she's starting to make up lies about me. In fact, you should be careful that she isn't a pathological liar or something. Or maybe even worse, she could have a mental disorder. My mom then said, "You're right, sweetie. Alicia, you need help. I'm going to make a hospital appointment for you." What? Was she serious? I tried to convince her that I was fine, but she wouldn't listen. I then turned to Eliza. "You won't get away with this." The next day, my mom tried to get me to go to the hospital, but I locked my bedroom door and refused to leave. But it didn't take long for her to find the spare key. And this time she came back with some dudes next door to help hold me down. I tried my best to break free, but it was hopeless. At that exact moment, I heard my dad's voice. "Let her go." I looked up and saw my dad was with a woman. My mom looked horrified and said, "How dare you bring your mistress into our home?" But my dad said, "It's not what it looks like, honey. This is Eliza, the real Eliza. That woman over there is an imposter. Her real name is Kim." OMG! I knew something was wrong with her. You might be wondering why my dad suddenly appeared. Well, I called him the day before and asked him to investigate Eliza, as I had a feeling there was something fishy going on. He went to the orphanage to get more info, and the sisters there kept saying Eliza was the sweetest woman, and that if he waited, he could meet her. Well, then the real Eliza turned up, and that's when my dad found out the truth. Turns out Kim was once Eliza's roommate. Eliza had moved out, but the sisters at the orphanage didn't know this, so they still gave me the old address. Eliza knew about my mom the whole time as she'd found the letters, but she was still mad about being abandoned, so wasn't ready to meet her. She told Kim everything about my family and how wealthy we were, so when I went by the old address and asked about Eliza, Kim seized the opportunity to steal Eliza's identity. My dad pointed at Kim and said, "I'll give you 10 seconds to get out of my house or I'll call the police. Don't you ever come near my family again." Kim fled immediately, and we never saw her again. As for the real Eliza, well, that was quite the reunion. At first it didn't go well, but gradually Eliza opened up to my mom, and of course my dad's corruption charges were dropped after he was found innocent. He also forgave my mom and moved back in. Eliza visits us often, and I have to say, it's exactly what I hoped having a big sister would feel like. I'm so glad we're all reunited now.